welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. China has warned it will crush all foreign interference over Taiwan after Japan announced plans to deploy missiles near the island, as Beijing reasserted its claim over Taiwan and criticized Japan's move. Taiwan has maintained that only Taiwan can decide the island's future. This comes as Taiwan announces that they are to boost their defense spending to increase Taiwan's 2026 defense spending to 3.32% of the GDP, as Taiwanese President Lai declares that the move aims to deter Beijing. Now, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has officially announced a $40 billion supplementary defense budget to boost significant new U.S. arms purchases as China intensifies pressure and Washington urges Taipei to spend more. Lai has declared that the move aims to deter Beijing while reaffirming his commitment to democracy, dialogue, and peace. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has stated that President Trump has hinted he may hold up to 4 in-person meetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping next year, marking an unprecedented level of high-level U.S.-China contact. This comes as China agrees to buy at least 87.5 million metric tons of U.S. grain over 3.5 years. China has completed its first-ever emergency space launch, sending the Shenzhou 22 with 600 kilograms of supplies to the Tiangong station to replace a damaged return craft after Shenzhou 20 was found to have cracks, allegedly caused by space debris. The new vessel marks a critical step in maintaining crew safety ahead of their expected return. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul said he is in the last stages of coordinating a rescheduled trip to China after his October visit was postponed. After Germany cancelled the trip over lack of high-level meetings, Wadephul's visit is to pave way for Chancellor Friedrich Merz's first trip to Beijing early next year amid growing trade tensions. China has urged Liu Weidong, former deputy general manager of China's South Industries Group, with suspected bribery. Liu, who was first placed under investigation by the China's anti-graft watchdog in February, now faces formal prosecution as Beijing continues its broad corruption crackdown. China's private defense sector is rapidly expanding as global conflicts drive demand, with Beijing-based Lincoln Tianxin Technology becoming the first in the world to mass-produce a Mach 5-7 hypersonic missile. The missile, which has a 500 to 1,300 kilometer range, can be deployed from standard shipping container platforms, making a potential seismic shift. Now we start with US and China. US President Donald Trump has said that Chinese President Xi Jinping has more or less agreed to accelerate and increase China's purchases of US goods. Trump has said that he pressed Xi during a phone call to boost the pace and volume of these purchases. Let's listen into what was said.
Content to your talks?
Mostly trade. I spoke to President Xi about a lot of things, but trade and buying our farm products, and he said he agreed with me. I think he's gonna very much surprise you on the upside. I asked him, I'd like you to buy it a little faster. I'd like you to buy more, and he's more or less agreed to do that. I think we will be pleasantly surprised by the actions of President Xi. I have a good relationship, great relationship with him. I like him, he likes me. I'm gonna be going there in April. I guess you'll all be going with me, but I'm gonna be going to China in April.
In a related development, China has purchased at least 10 cargoes of U.S. soybeans. These deals, which involve shipments scheduled for January, comes as U.S.-China trade relations show signs of improvement. China has also resumed soybean imports and rolled back some of its previously expanded restrictions on rare earth exports. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Matthew Adam. He's an American journalist, joins us live from Washington. Thank you very much, Matthew, for joining us again. Good to see you.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Matthew, looking at this, what can U.S. export to China? As we know, China can export a lot of things to U.S. And how long do you think this kind of easing down on tensions, trade tensions between U.S. and China would stay? Do you think this will suddenly go back to how earlier this year it was the tit for tat tariff situation?
I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I suspect that President Donald Trump, is feeling pressure from soybean farmers here in the United States who were suffering because China started to boycott United States soybean products in retaliation against President Trump's tough tariff policy against the People's Republic of China. And maybe they've reached a turning point in their negotiations where both sides recognized that it was hurting their respective financial positions. President Trump was feeling it quite acutely here in the United States because the soybean farmers had been complaining that they'd been losing a lot of business, and there is now a proposal. The details of it have not been finalized, but President Trump wants to put together an aid package to help soybean farmers who have been hurt by China's boycott of their products. So, President Trump was feeling a lot of, getting a cold here. President Trump was feeling a lot of pressure domestically to do something about this, and it looks like he did something. And I imagine he's not going to want to upset the soybean farmers in the United States who suddenly have had their access to Chinese markets restored. So I would expect that to continue for a while. Now, whether this leads to an opening up of Chinese markets in other products has yet to be seen. And I think we're going to have to wait a few days to see what happens on that front.
Right. And building on that, Matthew, don't you think that depending on China this heavily, not just for U.S.'s soybean farmers, as you mentioned, that they are suffering because of what China did in stopping or halting or slowing down on the purchases of the, don't you think this is not a long-term solution?
Well, ultimately, having trade agreements is a long-term solution, but President Trump has discarded a lot of that and wanted to ramp up his tariffs policy since his second term began in January of this year. So really, the best way to accomplish lasting stability, economic stability, is to have trade agreements between the two countries. And I'm not sure what progress they're going to make there, but since Trump is now, at least on soybeans and probably a few other products that China purchases, and is quite dependent on, I imagine you may see trade deals on some products with China. Perhaps this could lead to a thawing of relations between the two countries with respect to trade. But this is just one small area of trade, and I'm not sure how far it's going to carry over into other areas of trade. But it is, I think there is reason to be optimistic at this point, right, that there is a thawing of trade relations between the U.S. and China.
Yes, indeed.
That it's taking place.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for emphasizing that and sharing that insight. That was Matthew Adam. Now we move on to our next news. Tensions between Japan and China remain high as Japan dismisses a Chinese letter to the United Nations that has accused Tokyo of threatening armed intervention over Taiwan as inconsistent with the facts and unsubstantiated. This comes as Chinese UN Ambassador Fu Kong has accused Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi of a grave violation of international law and diplomatic norms when she said in the parliament this month that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. Japan's UN Ambassador Kazuyuki Yamazaki, in his letter, responded to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, saying Japan's fundamental policy is one of passive defense. He wrote that China's assertion that Japan would exercise the right of self-defense without first being subjected to an armed attack is erroneous. Meanwhile, Fu's letter was the strongest Chinese criticism of Takaichi, a conservative nationalist who took office last month, pointing to the worst bilateral tensions between China and Japan in years. China says Takaichi's remarks and severely damaged trade cooperation, while concerts of Japanese musicians in China have been abruptly cancelled. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Good to see you. What more has changed since the last time we have spoken? Is it escalating more, or how do you analyze the situation between China and Japan now?
Of course, China want to escalate. That's why escalation has happened, because Japan side hasn't done anything. In this case, China's logic is China is a victim, and any time without the permission from the United Nations, they can attack Japan. As a self-defense, they said, but this is ridiculous, because firstly, this means that China will attack Japan without Japan attack China. And secondly, indeed, view from the PM Takaichi's speeches, explanation in the National Diet, China invade Taiwan. In this case, it could be the crisis for Japan, she said. So without China's invasion to Taiwan, this is not a crisis. So that's why every time China attack Japan or China attack Taiwan first. After that, crisis has happened. So despite this, China say China is a victim. That is what kind of logic? We cannot understand. China is provoking Japan. China is provoking Taiwan. China is provoking others. That's why this is a problem. So China cannot say they are victim. They are offender. That is clear. So logic is very strange. But anyway, China want to make pressure to Prime Minister Takaichi, the new government of Japan, to test her capability. So that's why this is a crisis, and China control situation. Because of the China escalate situation, Japan did not do anything. So that's why when it will end, China can decide. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And now that we know that China has escalated this matter to United Nations, what do you think UN could do to ease tensions between them?
Anyway, China want to make the pressure to Prime Minister Takaichi. So that's why anything that they want to exploit it. And in case of the United Nations, there are many countries who do not touch this issue. So that's why it's simply said, because they do not know this issue, there is a possibility they will follow China's logic. That is a concerning point. So in this case, Japan needs to say something about this to explain the situation. China escalated the situation, Japan did not do anything. That is an important part. But without knowledge, some country accept China's logic, even if the China's logic is completely strange. So that is a concerning point.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump had said that he had a great talk with Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump has stated that he has had a great relationship with the new Prime Minister, describing her as smart, strong, and destined to be a great leader. Earlier, Takaichi said Trump told her to call him anytime during their first phone conversation. The call followed her recent off-the-cuff remarks suggesting that a hypothetical Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger Japanese military action, a comment that has sparked a diplomatic furor between China and Japan. This is what U.S. President has shared.
Great, it was great. I had a great talk. I have a very good relationship with her. With Japan, likewise, I just came back from Japan, and We have a great relationship. The new Prime Minister, myself, she's very smart, she's very strong, and she's going to be a great leader. Thank you very much, everybody.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for staying with us. Now looking at their conversation and also analyzing their newly developing relationship between the two presidents, between Sanai Takaichi and U.S. President Donald Trump, what does this warm rapport between them suggest about where this direction of U.S.-Japan relationship is going regarding Taiwan and involving China as well?
View from the U.S. reaction towards Japan-China vocal battle. In this case, it is clear that the U.S. ambassador to Japan clearly mentioned in the X, thank you very much for Chinese diplomat to promote U.S.-Japan relations in Japanese repeatedly. So that's why U.S. attitude is clear. The U.S. is Japan's side. But at the same time, as a preventive measure, the President Trump started to intervene to negotiate with both the Japan side and the China side. That has happened. Because this is just a vocal battle, not Russia and Ukraine or Israel or the Islamic extremists or etc., etc. These are the real war. But Japan-China battle is still the diplomatic level or economic level, not the war. So that's why even if the U.S. intervene, U.S. intervention is a little bit preventive measure to prevent escalation further. And at the same time, the U.S. side is very clear. U.S. stand with Japan in this case. So repeatedly, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, the Senkaku Island is part of the U.S.-Japan alliance. So this means that if the China try to occupy, of course, the U.S. intervene. It's indicated by the U.S. ambassador to Japan by mentioning in the tweet repeatedly, especially in Japanese, not English, in Japanese repeatedly. So that's why this is sending the message to Japanese. The U.S. is stand with Japan, and so that is clear. So view from this, the U.S. intervention, President Trump's intervention in China and Japan, this is a preventive measure to stop the escalation. But at the same time, indeed, their stance is already clear. So view from this, Japan side, it is welcome if President Trump intervene.
Right. And do you think should Japanese leaders be more cautious when making public remarks about regarding or involving Taiwan and hypothetical military scenarios? Or do you think this is necessary in today's geopolitical climate?
In case of the Japan's discussion, it is such kind of discussion has clearly mentioned in the governmental side. But view from the democracy, this is not the right way. Because such kind of the basic level of discussion of the security is a problem. In this case, there is no discussion about the security issue around Japan. So this is not good for the democracy. Democratic country, security issue is a part of the important topic in the discussion. And such kind of the basic level of discussion, not a military operation or something like that. So that's why we must discuss, and the Prime Minister should explain this honestly. So that's why such kind of basic level, if the China say this is not the proper, but the view from the democratic country, we must say something about such kind of the basic level. So that's why we must say something. The Prime Minister should explain honestly that is needed. So if Japanese government recently repeatedly said next time we will be more cautious, will say more cautiously, yes, cautious. They care about the situation, that is true, but at the same time, they should explain honestly in front of the other Japanese voters that is needed in the democratic country. They should not stop remarking about the Taiwan issue, I think.
Yes, indeed. And thank you for shedding light on the reality of Japan's situation. Can you also tell us why do you think China, how is Japan covering this issue right now?
This issue is, of course, provocative, some people think. Because in Japan, there's no discussion class from the kindergarten to the university. So that's why how to discuss or debate class is not exist. How to discuss in the democratic country is not common. But in other country, in other democratic country, including of course India, of course the United States, and these countries, the people discuss the political matter more freely. So
Yes.
that's why Japan should be the country like this democratic country. In this case, debate is very important. And in case of the debate about national security, such kind of the basic level of explanation from the prime minister is just a common level, not a provocative level. So China is not democratic country, then they say that this is not proper, because China is not a democratic country. But Japan is democratic country. This means that we should not stop to say that.
Yes,
That
indeed.
is, so government is a little bit worried about China's response, but that is not proper, I think.
Yes, 100% agree. And also, I do agree that I wish it was more encouraged in Japanese education system. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Satoru Nagao, all the way from Japan. Now we move on and we stay in the region. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has announced plans to introduce a supplementary $40 billion defense budget to strengthen the island's military capabilities. In a Washington, Lai has emphasized that this new spending will include significant purchases of U.S. arms and aims to enhance Taiwan's defense strategy. The move comes as Taiwan faces increased military pressure from China, which claims Taiwan as its own territory. Lai has also reaffirmed his commitment to dialogue with Beijing, although China has rejected his efforts. Lai has previously set a goal for Taiwan's defense spending to reach 5% of the GDP by 2030. For 2026, Taiwan's proposed defense budget is expected to surpass $30.25 billion. This step aligns with U.S. calls for Taiwan to bolster its defense spending, a matter the United States has consistently emphasized in its relations with its allies. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Matthew Adam. He's an American journalist and author, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Matthew, for staying with us.
Hi.
Hi.
Sure.
Thank you. Looking at this, how might this U.S. encouragement of higher defense spending among its allies, how do you think this is affecting and shaping Taiwan's long-term security posture?
President Donald Trump has long maintained that America's strategic allies around the globe, strategic partners, I should say, around the planet, are not paying their fair share of defense, and has asked them to increase their defense budgets. So the fact that Taiwan then has announced that it's going to spend an extra $40 billion or so on defense against a possible communist Chinese invasion is definitely good news for the American government, for the Trump administration. This is what they want. And I think that a lot of America's other strategic partners around the world are also following suit. I don't know if they're hitting the target percentage of their budget for defense spending that President Trump wants, but many of them have been increasing their, in Europe and elsewhere, have been increasing their levels of defense spending, because they're getting the message that America doesn't want to subsidize them as generously in terms of military protection as it has in the past. So I imagine that this step by Taiwan is the first of many that are going to take place in Taiwan to increase the defense spending, and among U.S. strategic partners around the globe, because to use an American expression, that the gravy train is coming to an end. They're going to have to start to pay for their own military defense, at least, maybe not 100%, but they're going to have to pay more towards it because President Donald Trump doesn't think that the U.S. taxpayer should be subsidizing them as lavishly as they have done in the past.
Yes, and Matthew, how do you think this move or encouragement and call by U.S., could it also risk escalating tensions with Beijing, despite President Li's stated willingness for dialogue?
Well, yeah, for sure, it's going to escalate tensions with China, but I don't think President Trump is worried too much about escalating military tensions with China. He has been denouncing China for years, and I think he's fine with the dictatorship in Beijing being unhappy with him on military matters. So I don't think he really cares. Short of an actual war breaking out, if the Chinese are unhappy, then I think Donald Trump thinks that he's doing his job properly.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Matthew Adam for joining us today and sharing that insight all the way from Washington, D.C. Now we move on to our next news. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has expressed increasing alarm over China's growing influence and military pressure. He has noted that Beijing is intensifying its infiltration campaigns within Taiwan, while also ramping up military drills and gray zone harassment near the island. President Lai has stressed that the most significant threat to Taiwan is not just military action, but the potential for compromise, which could lead to war. He has reaffirmed that Taiwan will adopt a strategy of self-defense with plans to bolster protection for its high-tech sector and improve its military procurement process. President Lai has also highlighted that Taiwan will remain firm in rejecting Beijing's one China, one country, two systems model, calling it a red line. He has emphasized the need to counter China's transnational repression and protect Taiwan's citizens. And he has also outlined efforts to achieve high levels of combat readiness by 2027. Now we move on to our next news. China and Malaysia are moving to deepen their strategic partnership. In Beijing, China's top diplomat Wang Yi has met with Malaysia's National Security Council Chief Raja Dato' Nusirwan Zainal Abidin, and Wang has said that China is ready to align development strategies with Malaysia and expand political security and economic cooperation. Has added that both sides should work towards stronger practical results across key sectors. Nusirwan in China for the second bilateral dialogue on managing South China Sea maritime issues has said that Malaysia values its long-standing friendship with Beijing. He has reaffirmed Malaysia's commitment to the One China policy and said that Kuala Lumpur will push ahead with major joint projects and deepen cooperation in multiple fields. And that's a wrap on the China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.